Again, good evening to everyone in European countries, in Israel and Palestine, and in the US who is listening to us, because I know that we have listeners from all of these different countries and continents. My name is Jan Böhme. I'm on the board of the New Israel Fund Germany. The New Israel Fund Germany is an affiliate of the New Israel Fund, founded in 1979 in the USA. The New Israel Fund has affiliates in Great Britain, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, and Austria, and since 2014 also in Germany. New Israel Fund supports civil society organizations in Israel which fight for democracy, the rule of law, and human rights, for religious tolerance and pluralism, and for more social and economic equality in Israel's society. I myself worked for many years as senior advisor on North Africa and the Middle East in the parliamentary group of the Green Party in the German parliament. And from 2006 till 2010, I was the director of the Israel office of the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Tel Aviv. After 4 elections in 2 years, Israel finally has a new government since May of last year. The first government without Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister after 12 years. This government is unique in quite a few ways. Never in the Israeli history has there been a coalition that contained parties with such a diversity in political outlook than this one. Never before was an Arab party formal part of an Israeli government. There were predictions that this government would not last long. However, exactly today, this government has been in power for already 7 months. From my time in Tel Aviv, I remember a slogan sprayed on a wall in Schenkin Street: "It's not easy being green." Having worked as an advisor in the parliamentary group of the Greens in the German parliament during the time when the party was in opposition, as well as during a time when the party was in government, I could relate to this. Following the developments in Israel, I often thought how much more difficult it must be for Meretz and for our 2 guests to be part of the current Israeli government. Our 2 guests, Gaby Lasky and Mossi Raz, members of the Knesset from the Meretz party, stand for everything I mentioned in connection with the support of the New Israel Fund for civil society organizations in Israel. The struggle for peace, human rights, and democracy, for religious tolerance and pluralism, and for social and economic equality. And indeed, they have been and are involved with and connected to a lot of the organizations that are supported by the New Israel Fund. We want to discuss with them the possibilities and challenges that they see and that they experience in and with this current Israeli government. There has been a great interest in this discussion with you. As of today, we had 400 registrations for this online panel, and we are also streaming it on Facebook. It will also be available on YouTube later on. After an introduction, I will discuss some initial questions with our guests. After about roughly half an hour, my colleague on the board of NIF Germany, Adina Stern, will join us and give an overview of the questions from the audience. In order to share them with us, please use the Q&A button, or in German, the F&A button, and not the chat button. So without further ado, I want to very much welcome our guests, Gaby Lasky, who we're still waiting for, and Mossi Raz. Thank you so much for the time that you are sharing with us for this discussion. In order for everyone to understand your background better, please tell us something about what made you become active in the struggle for human rights and for overcoming the occupation, and something about what made you decide to run for a seat in the Knesset. Mossi, please start.
Okay, thank you for organizing this meeting. And I see more than 200 participants right now, or to have 400 like you mentioned. It's very important for us that to see that people are interested in what we are doing, and it's very important to us that people ask us questions, and we have to think about the answers, because we are in a very complicated situation that we never experienced before, and we have to think sometimes. It's good to think from time to time. So for your questions about how I started human rights activity or struggles, I'm not sure that I know. The story in my family is that when I was 6 years old, I had a kind of fight with the teacher, not, of course, not physical fight, but a kind of in agreement, and I went home because we did not agree. And then my parents told me, okay, when you become become grown up, you can go to the Knesset, you can go to be a minister or whatever. Then you can change the law. But right now you are a student, and you have to obey. So in the family, we say that this was the start. I don't really know, but even in high school, I was very active regarding social issues, regarding questions of freedom of religion. I was active against the war in Lebanon and so on. And even in the occupied territories, even as a high school student, many years ago, I went to demonstrate. So actually, I feel that I am a kind of an activist for about 43 years since my first demonstration, and then again and again. For the question of the Knesset, so I can go back to my parents, but basically, in 1992, when Meretz was formed, Shulamit Aloni, the leader of the party, the founding leader, the woman that was kind of the mother of the movement, told us, young Meretz, I was young back then, you should, one of you or two of you should run to the Knesset. And actually, we had a meeting in Tel Aviv, and 14 leaders of Young Meretz, or actually it was still Young Raz, the citizen rights and peace movement that was the main force who joined Meretz, sat together, 14 leaders, and they decided that I will be the candidate. By the way, Gaby Lasky was one of these 14 leaders.
Okay, Gaby was already seen, so I hope that she will be with us in a minute, and then I will pose the question also to her. But in order not to lose time, because we only have 1 hour, I will come to the next question to you, Mossi, while Gaby is joining us. There she is.
Hi. Yes.
Yes, she is.
Hi, Gaby. Good evening. Very warm welcome to you too. You just have to jump in because I just discussed the first question with Mossi, and the first question was, what made you become active in the struggle for human rights and against the occupation, and what made you decide to run for a seat in the Knesset?
So do you want me to start or Mossi?
No, Mossi has already answered, so you have to jump right in, please.
Right in. Okay. So first of all, I'm really sorry that I'm a little bit late. I had to be in the Knesset, so I just came back. For many years I've been a human rights lawyer, dealing mostly with occupation, against the occupation and demonstrators. And here, now I'm changing from my phone to the computer. What made me actually want to become a member of Knesset is because through so many years I've been representing Israelis and Palestinians fighting against the occupation in the Israeli courts and in the military courts. And I thought that actually through the Knesset, I can, instead of dealing with a case per case scenario, I can change policy in the Knesset. So I thought that through the Knesset, those changes can be done instead of going every day to court and trying to help people in an individual way. So that's one of the things that I thought that would be very interesting for me to try and do through the Knesset. I can say that it is harder than I thought, to say the truth. Also, through the courts, I can see immediate changes. If I'm able to release someone from detention or acquit something, these are things that I can see immediately. In the Knesset, the procedures take such a long time that sometimes it's, you know, I feel that it's better to be in court, that I can help more people through the courts than through the Knesset. But I'm there only 7 months, and let's see what if I can make a difference or a bigger difference through the Knesset than what I could have done through the courts.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to come to the first sort of general questions concerning what is your assessment of this current government after 7 months in office. Did you only have to swallow bitter pills, or did you have an impact? Were you able, for example, to make a difference to tackle the climate crisis? So, Mossi, maybe you can start, and Gaby is still working on the technical things.
So of course, this is the most important question. If you can make a difference, if you ask about the climate crisis, yes, our colleague and friend Tamar Zandberg, who was the head of the party, is the environmental minister. She's doing a great work. It's too early to say about what we can really change. We really work for, you know, renewable energies, changing the whole attitude of Israel. Actually, for example, if I check renewable energies, we had a target of 10% in 2020, and right now we are only 7.5. We were active in changing, actually, the target for 30% in 2030 and 100% in 2050. But just to say targets, it's not enough. We have to work for that. So we are really focusing on that. I'm a chair of a committee that we want to make a pressure. We have even a small budget to make a pressure in this direction. This government actually had some new legislations that might, for my opinion, might help. But we should see in the future if we can make a real change, which we still did not adapt as we wanted climate legislation. So it's something that should, that should happen in the future. But of course, the main question is not only about the environment. Can we make a difference in this government? I think the answer is still open. I want to be very frank. In the last 30 years, Meretz was 5 years in the coalition, 25 years in the opposition. I think we were more effective in the opposition, but maybe it was because we were 25 years in the coalition, only 5 years. So we have to change this attitude. It's not going to be easy, and this government is not a kind of a government that you say, okay, I work now with labor, or like you have in Germany, okay, you have liberals, Green, and the SPD. I know there are a lot of differences between them, but the differences between us and the right wing in the government are way, way more. So we need time to know more in order to answer the question.
Okay, Gaby, your assessment of the government and the bitter pills on one side and the impact on the other side?
Well, I don't know if Mossi said already, but the basis of this government, from the beginning, it was settled and agreed that in the one hand, we're not going to end occupation, and on the other hand, we're not going to make annexation. So one of the most important things for Meretz is actually to try and reach a peace agreement with our neighbors. But here our hands are closed from the beginning, that that this is an issue that we cannot push forward. Although our ministers are having talks with the Palestinian ministers, and our members of parliament, of the government, went and met with Abu Mazen, and now the Minister of Defense invited Abu Mazen to his house. But it's agreed that we are not going to make any steps forward for peace agreements. Not only that it was agreed, our Prime Minister said it openly that he is not interested in making peace accords. Although it's unthinkable to say, that if someone has a chance to make peace, they fully and openly are saying, I'm not going to go through that path. So in that position, it is very difficult for us to say, okay, we have in the possibility to make a big change. And so it is the same with the settlement violence and with the illegal settlements, and this government is still building in the occupied territories. So those things for us are very difficult. Although one of the things that we're able to do, if we're not able to make a real difference in the positive, we're at least making a difference in the stopping bad things from happening. There were plans to start building in E1, and because of our presence in the coalition, we were able to stop it. Or in Atarot, it's near Jerusalem. So these things we have been able to stop them, and that is, when we look at the good and the bad, those are important things that we can say that we're able to move forward. In the other hand, there are some things that this government agrees upon them. All of the members of the party are agreeing. For example, the laws, all the legislation regarding the rule of law. So in the beginning, we agreed to pass on several legislations in order not to allow someone that has criminal records to become prime minister, but this has been going very slowly. But we, as Mossi said, frankly, our position regarding economic issues or regarding human rights issues are not going forward in the way that we would expect and the way that we want. We are always looking that the alternative is worse. A very right-wing Orthodox government is worse for Israel than the government that we have today. But I think that is not enough. Politically speaking, we cannot say that that only that we're happy with the fact that we're there and we're not letting the right wing to be in power. I think that we deserve, as a people, to put our agenda forward, not only in words but in action. So we're trying to push forward. For example, our minister Isawi Frej was in a meeting in Norway with the European partners that give money to the PA. He's pushing forward to continue with the Paris agreements, meaning that the economic relations with the PA are getting better. More Palestinian workers are getting permits to come into Israel and work, and things like that. But as I said, that is definitely not enough in our position. There are small things that we have been able to change. For example, we're putting forward through the Minister of Health, actually, a lot of things regarding the LGBT community, that they can now donate blood, for example, something that they couldn't do before. We're passing forward changes regarding abortion, that in Israel you have to go through a committee and things like that. So we are changing those things that, you know, making easier for a woman to decide for her if she wants to make an abortion or not. But those are not like the core issues that we have been fighting for more than 30 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Gaby, for the examples that you gave. Mossi, you are quoted in an article in today's English Haaretz saying that it is now on the front pages that settlement construction is not acceptable to Meretz and that Israeli society is listening. And my question is Israeli society really listening to your positions? Are you receiving more support? What are the polls saying since you are part of the government?
No, we don't receive more support. Actually, what I've said, I didn't see this quote, but what I'm saying again and again, that we oppose the settlement activity. And I don't have to say here, I use that this is a crime, but it's... and then people ask me, okay, so how can you sit in the government? What I'm answering is that this is a real problem. The fact that the government is building in the occupied territory settlement. But the difference, I was 5 years as member of Knesset in the opposition. And the difference is that now at least somebody is listening to me. When I was in the opposition, I was not quoted on that issue in Haaretz or wherever already. So this is the difference. The public in Israel become more and more right-wing. There is large support in the settlement activity. I think most of the Israelis even don't know what settlements are. I see that all the time. I go all the time to meet people. I go to the pre-army schools, like I don't know how to say it in English, but anyhow, people who take 1 year before the army, or when they are 18, to think. And I go to talk to them twice a week. And I see that during the years, it's very clear. And I see in the public opinion polls, we have a real problem. And we have a problem as Meretz. Maybe I have to mention here one of the problems of the center and left in Israel in the last 50 years. 50 years. I don't remember examples of a party from the center or left in Israel that was part of the coalition, and it was came to the next elections with more seats. We always, actually, in the two previous terms of Meretz in the coalition, it was catastrophic. In two elections campaigns, we actually lost more than 50% of our votes. The same was with Labour, with the Shatid, with all of them. Check me, in the last 50 years, with no, maybe there is one example, but basically, this is what happening. So I ask myself, why? Why can't we use the force that we are part of the coalition, and yes, more people are listening to us? By the way, we got only 6 seats, but we have 6 members of Knesset and 3 ministers. So even the fact that we are in the coalition, we are 9 instead of 6. So people should hear us more. But in the public opinion polls, yes, I saw Gaby just said a few days ago, a poll that we get the same number of votes, 6 seats, but in most of the others it's 4 or 5. So I asked myself, how come? There are many answers, but the main answer that I think we should tell to ourselves, one of the problems of being part of the coalition is that, okay, we have the health minister, and for my opinion, he's doing a great job. And by the way, even when you check in the public opinion polls, you get better results than most of the ministers in the government. But it is not enough, because at the end of the day, the main thing people think about when they go to vote is about the occupation. And actually, when you are in the coalition, you tend to deal with environment, with health, with many important things, but you not only forget to talk about the occupation, you have to I will say, to swallow the pill, to actually to work, to cooperate with this this occupation policy. So this is why I'm very worried. I'm very worried. I'm not very happy. On the other hand, I remember that almost all our voters want to see this government going on for 4 years. So we cannot leave, and we cannot do a lot in the government, and we have to deal with that.
Okay, thank you so much. Gaby, you want to relate to this question also?
Just one thing that it is important to say is that as Mossi said, our hands are very tight in this government, and the question, we are being heard in a sense that Mossi and I exactly every time that there is a new, we receive from the activists in the ground, either Israelis or Palestinians, every time that the settlers go and put a new caravan in the West Bank, in the occupied territories, we get phones and we get pictures, we get the coordinates, and now we have open doors, at least, you know, to the Minister of Defense, to the Vice Minister of Defense, to the head of the military units in the ground, and we start calling them and we start sending them the data, and we start and in this we can say that there is more activity regarding the dismantling of illegal settlements than it was in the past. I don't know, it's because Mossi and I are, you know, on their back, you know, all the time, you know, every time we get information about that's something that wouldn't happen if we were not in the government. So there's more activity regarding that, that our being in the government helps, but still we haven't changed the policy. We haven't changed the fact that this government is still building in the occupied territories, is still seeing part of the government sees the settlers as the new pioneers, as the new Zionists, as, you know, and we believe that being in the occupied territories and in the illegal settlements and outposts is, you know, you're being a criminal, you're committing a criminal offense, you are stealing land. So our vision of this situation is completely different. But at least the fact that we're there, there is some movement that we can see that at least they're dismantling some of those illegal outposts. But I have to say, regarding the fact that there is a lot of settler violence higher than it was before, we haven't heard the Prime Minister say one word against settler violence. He believes that maybe those are his voters, but even if people, you know, but they're committing real criminal offenses, and I think that his disregard for the criminal activity that these people are making, he's giving them some kind of an okay, you can continue doing what you're doing, because he's not saying anything against that.
Thanks, Gaby. Before I am asking Dina Stern to give us a summary of the questions that came in from the audience, I want to pose one more question concerning Germany, because I suppose that afterwards we will go right back to the situation in Israel. There is also a new government in Germany, and 2 of the 3 parties that make up the coalition can be considered your sister parties, Alliance 90, the Greens, and the Social Democrats. What expectations do you have concerning the future of German-Israeli relations? Mossi, Gaby, who wants to start?
Gaby, do you want?
First of all, I'm congratulations for the new government in Germany, and I wish we can have that kind of government in Israel. You know, Social Democrats and Greens, and the most right wing are the liberals. That can be incredible for Israel. One of the expectations we have, I think, as the left in Israel, and and being our party that we have very close relations with, I think that our expectations are not to be so lenient towards Israel, not to be soft regarding infringements of human rights, not to be soft regarding occupation and settlement activities. You say that a parent that loves his children has to get mad at him when he makes something wrong, bad or wrong. And I expect from our sisters and brothers in Germany to, when Israel is committing offenses against international law, things like that, they have to put they have to say it loud and clear that they will not accept that. I think that Germany has to start really not allow, not only putting settlement that the products from the settlements have to be
labeled correctly.
Yes, have to be labeled correctly as settlement products and not Israeli products, and that they have to start telling Israel that even in the coalition agreement say that they don't want to go forward towards peace. They have to tell Israel that this is the way out, and put a step every time that Israel infringes human rights in the occupied territories. I think that that's what friends do.
Thanks, Gaby. Mossi?
Yeah, actually, I think that for sure Germany is the main friend of Israel in Europe, and maybe one of two main friendly states in the world. I think that we should strengthen our relations. I expect actually every state in the world to have very good relations and cooperation with Israel. This is, I think, Germany is doing very well. To fight anti-Semitism, it's very important, and this is, I think, Germany is doing very well. And do not take part in the occupation. And this thing is not done very well by Germany. What is not taking part, I don't buy settlements product. This is what I expect from every person in the world. This is my expectations. I know that I know many people are doing that. And one more thing, recognize Palestine as a state, which is again, was not done by any state in Europe apart of Sweden. So this is my expectations. I think that those expectations are something that Germany can do and should do. Do not support sanctions, BDS, on Israel itself. I think it's counterproductive. First, it's not just, and second, it's counterproductive. But do not cooperate with the settlement activity and with the occupation.
Okay, I would now like to ask Adina Stern to join us, my colleague from the board in the New Israel Fund Germany, and give us a summary of the questions that came in from the audience.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am happy to join you. Unfortunately, lots of people asked questions that were answered while you were speaking. So I tried to cluster them. There were, of course, a lot of questions regarding the occupation. I'm not going to read all of them. There is one question that keeps appearing. What do you do against the daily violence? And what can you try to do against the daily violence at the occupied territories? Somebody else asked, Kerstin Müller asked that it seems that concerning settlement building, there's even more building than under any other government before. Can you give your assessment on this topic, settlement building and relations with the Palestinians, please? And there's another question, what is the situation regarding prosecution of settlers who attack Palestinians and Palestinian property? Or where can people like Yair Golan, whose courageous criticism of settler pogroms may not have been phrased the best way, but it was shocking that coalition members like Labour's Michaeli, instead of supporting him, attacked him. Where can he find support in Israel? So I would suggest that you try to answer some of these questions, then we continue. We have questions regarding international politics, we have questions regarding German-Israeli relations, we have questions regarding USA-Israeli relationships, how they can change now after 4 years of the the love affair between Netanyahu and Trump. So maybe you can answer, I'm trying to get behind all these questions, so if you can answer these for the time being.
Okay, so let's start with the settlements and the settler violence and the comments by Yair Golan.
Okay, so actually, if I talk about the settlements activity, this is a high settlement activity. I am not sure that this is the highest ever, but here we have to say, Gaby mentioned earlier that this government is not going to make peace. That's a pity. I understand that, but this is a problem that the Prime Minister is saying that. I think it's very bad that he's saying that. And this government is not going to annex territories. Okay, even the previous governments did not annex territories. And then the government is going to build more or less like Netanyahu's government, like the previous governments used to build every year a few thousand housing units. So actually, we agreed to freeze the situation, but there is no freeze to the occupation. The occupation becomes deeper and deeper with every new settlement activity. And there is no freeze of the settlement activity, so we are in a real problem here. In order to defend ourselves, I would say that first, even Rabin and Peres and Barak used to build more or less in the same numbers that Netanyahu and Bennett used to build. This is a kind of the settlement activity is a kind of a demon in not demon, the opposite, a kind of a trend in the Israeli governments that they cannot stop. It's like going on with the inertia. Nobody freezed the settlements activity. Maybe Netanyahu was the only one to do that for a few months, but he did not freeze it the other 15 years that he was the prime minister. And again, this is a real problem. About settlers' violence, this is one of the things that since my first day in this Knesset on April, I started with.
Mossi, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Gaby is part of this campaign and others. I think that the main difference now is not that we have more settlers' violence, but we have more opposition for members of Knesset in the coalition. By the way, most of them. The conference that I had in the Knesset was with Issam Arane from Labour Party and Osama Saadi from the United List, so from the opposition and coalition, two from the coalition. So I think that now we hear about that more and more because a kind of a campaign of civil society, many civil society organizations, and New Israel Fund, Breaking the Silence, Peace Now, and others are part of it. And I think it's very effective. So I hope that at least people know now that there is a problem. Because when I spoke first to Omer Bar-Lev, when he just nominated as a minister, I'm not sure that he was that aware like he is aware now. And the same with the defense minister, Benny Gantz. For sure, he was not that aware like he is aware now. So at least At least I can say that. Now, about the question about Merav Michaeli and about Yair Golan, I haven't heard Merav Michaeli, but I should say that in few cases during this government, since in those 7 months, Merav Michaeli, actually, I had a few good surprises from her attitude when she spoke against the decision about the human rights organizations, Palestinian human rights organizations, when we spoke very clearly about settlement activity. So I haven't heard what she said about Yair Golan, but we don't have to deal with that. We have to deal with the fact that Merav Michaeli and Yair Golan, Labour and Meretz, and of course United List and others, we are part of the struggle against the occupation.
Just for information, Merav Michaeli is the chairperson of the Labour Party in Israel. Gaby, you want to relate to the question?
And just shortly, I want to say that it's important now that Yair Golan is also part of this, of these members of parliament that are speaking freely and openly against settlers' violence. But if you want to say that someone is, that is has been very spoken for so many years, you have him in front of you. Mossi not only speaks, he has been there for many years in the front lines, and he has been attacked and accused, and it's, and Yair Golan, we're happy that he joined us, but he's a latecomer. And we're happy, and actually Mossi and I were the first really to stand behind him. Our Nitzan Horowitz, the leader of our party, spoke openly defending him very, very, very strongly about the things that he said. But the problem is I think that in this campaign, actually, we have passed the first step. Now nobody can deny that there is violence, that there is settlement violence. Until not so long ago, most of the people in Israel denied that there was something like that. Now nobody can deny it because we have been able to put it up front, mostly because they have been so active in that. And there is the B'Tselem camera project and the Yesh Din that is talking about it, and all the human rights organization in Israel, together with members of coalition. So these things are out there. Now, there was another question regarding what do they do to them? Are they being arrested? Are they being indicted? And here, the thing is that no, not so much. And we know that the minister of police, he's a member of the Labour Party, Omer Bar-Lev, which actually said out loud in a meeting with an American diplomat that there is settlers' violence. But so it's good to acknowledge it. But now the next step is to strike and apply the rule of law against them. And this, I can say as a lawyer, has not been done. I know, as someone that represented many Palestinians in the military courts, if there is such a doubt, or just someone accused a Palestinian of doing any criminal activity in the occupied territories, he will be arrested. Even if there's a child, a young child, he will be arrested in the middle of the night from his bed, handcuffed and blindfolded, and he will be taken to the military courts. They have the means, without doing it night arrests and things like that. But they can find the people that, that have been very violent against Palestinians and against the military. They can do that, but they're not doing it. And I think that the next step is not only acknowledging it, but it is detaining them and bringing them to court.
Okay, thank you very much. We have now the problem that we have only 10 minutes left, and I have one question which I definitely need to ask you at the end. So Adina, if you could pose one or maximum two other questions from the audience. For more, unfortunately, we will not have time.
Okay, then I have to choose. I think the main there are a few people who asked, please address the issue of labeling Palestinian NGOs as terrorist organizations, and what can we in the West do about that? And also there are quite a lot of questions asking, in general, what can we do? We were all very intrigued about Israeli-European, Israeli-US relations. I would like to quote two, okay? How can people in Germany or Europe support especially your activities for human rights against the occupation? What can the Green Party in Germany do and the German government? Then there also a comment, thank you very much for your determination and commitment to bring human rights to Israel, but you offer little optimism for success. What can the world outside Israel, as individuals and countries, do to press this right-wing government to accept a different model for bringing peace to this world? This is also connected to the question, how do you relate to BDS? Okay, there are more questions about that, but there are too many.
Thank you very much, Adina, and please mute yourself.
Yes.
Gaby, you want to start this time?
Okay. There are a lot of questions, so I will just take one of the angles. As a human rights lawyer, I have to be optimistic, you know, because if not, you have to change the way of your work and do something else. So now I'm being a realist, and after Mossi and I told you all about the difficulties that we still have in this government, I'm still optimistic that change can happen, but and this is exactly the place where we can say it. As Israel has maintained very good relationships with Germany through the years, and it's about time that this relationship tells Israel that there are some things that really have to be done in the way to proceeding towards changing what is happening in the occupation. Even if we're not signing a treaty, Germany has to be very, very strong regarding the fact that no more housing units have to be built. This happened when the US several years ago actually said that they put it as a plan for the Israeli government to stop settlement activity. I think that this is one of the things that Germany has to ask from Israel. There are plans to bring more housing units, but at least, you know, when we saw the plans, some of the housing units are in the middle of the occupied territories, in the very violent settlements and things like that. Whereas if we start to talk again about the Geneva plan, the Geneva plans, or the Arab how you say it, the Arab
Peace Initiative.
Or then, you know, we're talking about land swaps. So if those housing units would be in the areas where the land swap would be, you know, then we can say, okay, we can live with it. But if the plans are constructing, you know, in the difficult places, in where they will, in the long term, will not allow to make a Palestinian viable country, then we're not making peace, but we're making occupation in a way that in the future we will not be able to make a viable peace with the Palestinians. So this is something that the German government has to say, that all of the things that you're doing today will not enable in the future to make a Palestinian viable state. This is one of the things that the German government has to take into consideration and plant it to the Israeli society as one of the important things that they have to be done regarding Israeli-German relationships. Mossi, if I have something else, I will say.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I think I answered most of those questions when I talk about Israel and Germany. I think I said I am against BDS on Israel. I think it's not just. It's just I make a damage to people that are innocent, and it's not productive. I think it's counterproductive. It will not help. But the difference is, of course, the settlements products and occupation activity. So what I've related to Germany, this is what we should do with everywhere in the world. This is for the question on the BDS. On the human rights organizations, I actually mentioned that maybe you should talk about that, Gaby, but I mentioned that even Labor actually were asking good questions about that, and we should ask those good questions. I don't know what you asked, what the world can do about that. I really don't know. I'm not sure that I have an answer. But if you believe that they are not terror organizations, if you believe that they are human rights organizations, then your government have to go in this line. For example, I know that the Netherlands just stopped funding one of those organizations. Because of that or not because of that, I don't know. I did not check. But if you think that those are human rights organizations and your state, wherever it is, Netherlands, Germany, UK, or wherever, supporting them, then you should go on supporting them. And of course, make sure that it goes to human rights activity and not to anything, the money, and not to anything else. This is, but it will not solve the problem. Yes, I don't see how it make how it's going to change the decision, the declaration about them that actually is going to make them in a real problem, financing wise, and I don't know. Maybe they will try to sentence, take to court some of their activists. You asked about the Green Party in Germany. I am not sure that the Green Party in Germany can do something against the occupation, but I really believe that we can learn a lot from the Green Party in Germany about environment. This is what you have to teach us, not about the occupation. This is very shortly. Maybe you should elaborate a few things, a few sentences about the human rights organizations, Gaby.
Regarding the human rights organizations, I have to say that I worked closely with 3 of those organizations, the one that are the legal organizations, with El Haq, DCI Palestine, and Adamir, that represent Palestinians in the military courts. And from my work, I can say that they were excellent lawyers, that they were doing a great job. They were searching for human rights in their job. They have been working for many years. There are organizations that are very well acknowledged worldwide. And suddenly, I have to say, there was an NGO Monitor organization started to look into those organizations, and after they turned to the Minister of Defense, then he decided to make them illegal in Israel and in the West Bank. And this is after so many years working. I think that the government of Germany has to get good responses from the Israeli government regarding this act. And if, as Mossi said, if these organizations have been doing amazing human rights work for many years for Palestinians, they have to make sure that the funding goes to that activities. I can't say that there are not organizations that maybe used badly funds. I cannot have, say that regarding all the 6 organizations and things like that. But I think that the fact that they're making them illegal, while they're being a very important part of the NGOs in Palestine that gave legal aid and aid for women and things like that, and making them illegal is counterproductive for the Palestinians in the ground. So I think that Germany has to ask more questions regarding that and to find a way to make this activity, the activities that they were presenting, continue. Most of the children in the military courts were represented by Adamir and by DCI Palestine. So that leaves a lot of children without any representation in the courts. Is this good or bad? Of course it's bad. So so you cannot leave it at only that, you know, they misused funds, because you're by making them illegal, you're also infringing rights of, you know, the most vulnerable in Palestinian society. And Israel is not giving any response towards that. What are they going to do? They're not giving Israeli lawyers for the Palestinians there, or, you know, and things like that. So and Il-Haq is the organization that was working in the International Human Rights Court against acts against illegal actions of Israel in the West Bank. So you ask, is there a relationship between what they were doing in the international court and the fact that now that they're an illegal organization? You know, it's not such an easy response. So I think that Israel has to, they're saying that they're not putting out the evidence why they say that these organizations are illegal. I remember that when they name an organization as illegal, whether it be Hamas or whatever, they present the evidence and the facts and saying they have been doing this and this and this, and that's why I'm making them illegal. Regarding these organizations, or most of them, or DCI Palestine, they're not presenting they're not presenting the evidence. So I think that that's something wrong regarding that, and I think that the government, this government specifically, has to make a lot of inquiries regarding the outlawing these organizations. Maybe some of them. I'm talking specifically about the 3 legal organizations which I know, and I think that would be an important thing for the government to do. And one last thing regarding the Greens, I think that our relationship now, government to government, Greens to Greens, can be amazing. We can do amazing things regarding environment. Now, you know, instead of doing it only by parties from the opposition, we can do it government by government. And this government, the German government, can help Israel to make new legislation and new treaties with Europe that take into consideration environmental issues at the governmental level. And so I think this is an amazing opportunity that we have really to change a lot of things between Israel and Germany, even with the EU.
Gaby, thank you very much. I will skip my last question because it was concerning possible red lines, and that would open up a new discussion which would probably take at least another hour, and we are already over our time. So let me thank you very, very much again for all your assessments, explanations, and analysis, and for your openness and frankness. And before I close, I just want to mention the next event that is being presented by the New Israel Fund, Switzerland, Austria, and Germany on Monday, January 31st at 8 p.m. Central European Time. Hanno Löwy, the director of the Jewish Museum Hohenems in Austria, will talk with Daniel Sokach, the CEO of the New Israel Fund USA, about Daniel's book, Can We Talk About Israel? A Guide for the Curious, Confused, and Conflicted. And if you want to participate in that lecture, you can already go to the website of the New Israel Fund in Switzerland. There you can already register. So again, thank you very much, Gaby Lasky, and thank you very much, Mossi Raz, and all the best for your difficult work and your important work and all the challenges that go along with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you.
Later on. Bye-bye.